What's up, my wizards? It's Deb from Mtg. We like magic. Didn't think you were going to see me today. Thought I was done for the weekend. I'm never done, son. There's like 5 new cards in Core Set 2021 to talk about, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about them because they're kind of all really hype and I can't contain myself. So let's go ahead and get to it. Let's start with a hype little reprint right here. We got Palladium Mirror back. This is 3 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature. It's a mirror. You can tap it for 2 colorless mana, in case you've never seen it before. Well, this is the least exciting card of the day, which is really saying something because I like Palladium Mirror. A lot of you like Palladium Mirror. We're just a bunch of meerkats around here. But that said, like Gyre Engineer didn't see play, so I doubt this will. But Counterpoint, I see you down there in the comments section. Any deck can play this card. You have to be blue-green to play Gyre Engineer, right? Well, I mean, decks that normally can't ramp, like Big Red or some sort of mono-black or mono-white deck, can suddenly play this card, get a little bit of ramp. Yeah, Counterpoint, though, if this is the only thing in your deck that ramps, it's probably not consistent enough. And aside from that, it dies to everything. And it gets bounced by Teferi and Brazen Borrower on turn 3. And that's not the dies to Doomblade argument. The dies to Doomblade argument is this dies to a very specific piece of removal in the format. The argument I'm making is that it dies to everything. And I would much rather play Euro or Cultivate or some other piece of ramp that doesn't risk getting blown out on turn 3. The potential to go from 3 mana on turn 3 to 6 mana on turn 4 is really, really powerful, but probably not powerful enough in this fragile of a shell to truly see standard play right now. But it's going to be cool to have it limited. Do some ramping there. But up next is Hooded Blight Fang. That's a cool name for a card. 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 1/4 snake with Death Touch. And whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a Planeswalker, destroy that Planeswalker. Finally, another payoff for Death Touch Tribal, I guess, to go along with Vraska. And they work on curve with one another. It's so cool. And first thing I want to point out, too, is that this kind of swings for 2 damage. A lot of people are like, oh, it only has the 1 power, and that's kind of lame. Like, it actually kind of swings for 2, because you're guaranteed to get 1 point of damage in when it does swing. And you gain a life. That's not bad. But this goes along with all the 1 mana Death Touch dudes that we have in this format really well, because you go 1 mana Death Touch guy on turn 1, 2, 1 mana Death Touch guys on turn 2. And then you drop this, and you're effectively at least gaining 3 life and dealing 3 extra damage. It's like an Anthem effect for Death Touch decks that works in a really interesting way. Oftentimes, Anthem effects are good, not only because they help you deal more damage to your opponent, but also because they help your creatures deal more damage to the creatures blocking them, so that your creatures are more likely to trade or kill your opponent's creatures and stay around, right? Well, this doesn't increase the power of your creatures. It doesn't make them any better against the creatures that are blocking them, because they don't have to be any better against the creatures that are blocking them, right? You don't have to increase a Death Toucher's power. It's gonna kill whatever blocks it regardless. So this is a really interesting way of leveraging the Death Touch ability and effectively giving your creatures extra power while not really giving them extra power. They don't need extra power to kill the things that are blocking them. This way they deal guaranteed damage, so if your opponent's at a relatively low life total, you don't even have to deal combat damage to them. You just get through with 4 or 5 Death Touch guys, you win the game right then and there. Works pretty interestingly with anything that triggers off of life gain as well. Wanted to point that out. If you have enough Death Touchers out, suddenly you can gain a fair amount of life, and you can leverage that in other interesting ways as well. So a lot of cool stuff about this card. I love the toughness on it as well. I want to point that out, because very often it can block. Kill whatever it blocks and stay alive. Decent against aggro decks too, because of the life gain and the high toughness. It's just, there's so much to love about this card. And I'm not sure that it really sees standard play on a high level or anything, but just in terms of the Death Touch deck, this is 100% what it needed to get even better. And you've seen me play the Death Touch deck on camera. It's not bad. We've won games against like real decks in this format with Death Touch. It didn't need much help. And I'm not saying it's tier 1. It's not even tier 2 or 3 right now, but it definitely got a lot of help with this card. And it could already win games before. I can't wait to get back into the arena there with the Death Touch deck and see what the deck can do now, because this is 100% exactly what it needed. But up next, let's look at Radha, Heart of Kel. My girl's back. 3 mana, 1 a red and a green for a 3/3 legendary elf warrior. And as long as it's your turn, Radha has first strike. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play land cards from the top of your library. You pay 4 a red and a green and have Radha get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. Pretty powerful looking creature here, if I'm being honest. Now, First thing I want to point out is probably the least pointed out thing about the card. First Strike is a good ability. It's a supremely undervalued ability for creatures to have. So just a 3-power First Strike, basically as long as it's attacking, is really actually pretty good. I just want to throw that out there. 3 mana for a 3/3 First Strike on your turn. Not terrible stats. Really not, but everything else the card does is what's really worth getting excited about, obviously. So long as you have, say, an Azusa in play, that can help you churn through a bunch of lands really, really fast. So that could work, but they are both 3-drops, and they are also kind of both legendary. So there are some issues with that plan. Just throw that out there. But, anything that lets you play extra lands one way or the other should be at least interesting with Radha. If there are any, heavy red green ramp decks out there, like Teamer, that wants to incorporate more red, and I'm not sure that's a thing. But if Teamer does want to incorporate more red, this could be really powerful because of cards like Growth Spiral, Arboreal Grazer, Eero, anything that lets you play extra lands on your turn. Probably pretty decent with a Radha out, and this gives you a nice little body to attack with. Presumably, you'll be able to play more lands than you normally would, again, so long as you have Eero, Growth Spiral, Arboreal Grazer, and stuff like that. So you should be able to get to activate her ability relatively quickly, and when you do, that's really good. Like giving your creature, plus Beanstalk Giant, it seems like a pretty good ability, even if it's a relatively large mana sink. But this does go in ramp decks, I imagine, and any ramp deck that doesn't draw a 6 or 7 mana, crazy huge bomb answer threat thing, is probably going to want to sink its mana into this if it doesn't have anything else to sink its mana into, because suddenly having, a 10/10 First Strike seems pretty decent, in my opinion. So the card just does so many things, and I think that it's pushed for standard play, what with the First Strike on your turn, the ability to turn into a Beanstalk Giant plus with a Giant Growth, +3/+3. So all of that seems really good to me. Like, the card does look destined to see some amount of play, but right now we have Experimental Frenzy in the format, which effectively does these things, but more, right? Like, way better than this card. And Experimental Frenzy doesn't even see any play right now. So maybe we'll have to wait until rotation for this to really see play. But I don't even want to go and say that, There's probably plenty of decks that want a card like this right now, and it's probably way better than it looks on its face just because of all of the different abilities combined on it. So I'm not saying this doesn't see standard play day one, but I do think it's a little bit more likely we have to wait a while. But the other reprint of the last couple of days is Scavenging Ooze, and Scavenging Ooze, 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 ooze. You can pay a green and exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, you put a +1/+1 counter on ooze and you gain a life. So there it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Scavenging Ooze is back to ruin everyone's party. Or make your party much more fun and enjoyable. Who knows, This does really help murder the cat decks in the format. A lot of people have been saying, what are you talking about? No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. So long as you have more green mana than they have food, you should be able to stack activations on Ooze and kill their cat before they can bring it back. Exile their cat before they can bring it back. So this really helps go a long way towards doing stuff against those decks. It also does stuff against Elspeth Conquer's Death, denying them getting back their best stuff. So that's really good. It really helps, eat up cards in the graveyard so they can't escape Euro out of their yard or Croxer or whatever. Like, lots of stuff this card does, and it's probably main deckable too, because even if it's not eating something out of your opponent's graveyard they intend to get back later, it's still eating stuff, gaining you life, getting bigger, It's like, Scavenging Ooze is probably worth the 2 of in a lot of decks carrying green right now. I could see Sultai even playing a couple of copies of this main deck as an extra threat that doesn't cost them much mana and helps them get over other decks, right? So I like Scavenging Ooze. Really do. But here's the final card of the day right here, y'all. Here's Sublime Epiphany. 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for an instant. Choose one or more. You can choose them all if you want to. Counter target spell. Counter target activated or triggered ability. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Or target player draws a card. So this card looks unbelievably powerful to me, right? 6 mana steep. Yeah, I'll go ahead and address that concern. 6 mana is steep. 6 mana was also pretty expensive for a Torrential Gearhulk when we played that card. Given that you have one creature out, this does an interesting impression of Torrential, right? If you've got a big enough creature out especially. You'll get a body out of the deal some of the time. you'll counter a spell, which is often what Torrential Gearhold did, was just replayed a 3-mana counter spell out of the yard, so that happened a lot. You'll also draw a card, which Torrential Gearhulk often didn't do. So if you just get those 3 modes, which I think will be the most popular 3 modes to stack together. Oh, and also bounce a thing. Holy crap, right? So those 4 modes really altogether are definitely worth 6 mana, especially at instant speed. You know, a lot of people are evaluating this card as counter a spell and do other stuff, but that is not what the card says. It's not just like a worse cryptic command, although it probably is a worse cryptic command. But my argument is that it's not just that. Even if you don't have a creature to copy, this can do some pretty cool stuff all at one time for you. But again, let's say you do have one creature to copy and it doesn't really matter what it is. If your opponent swings in on you, well, you got 6 mana open, and again, yeah, cowboy, that's steep. But if your opponent swings in on you, you can copy one of your creatures so you have an extra blocker, bounce that big thing back to their hand, and draw a card. That's good. That is a really good play for 6. Even though it costs 6 mana, that's a good play for 6. You know what else costs 6 mana? Casualties of War. And it constantly blows people out. I'm not saying this is quite Casualties, but there's going to be a lot of situations where it's as good or better than Casualties, because it's going to counter their huge game-ending play, their explosion or whatever. Plus bounce their Wilderness Reclamation, right, and draw you a card. And that's just gas. That just seems really good to me. One of the big problems I have is, do blue decks play this or Discontinuity? Because I doubt they're going to want to play a couple of 6 mana cards. But, you know, Sultai plays like 4 copies of Casualties of War, so I could see playing a 2-2 split in some control decks between Discontinuity and this. Or maybe in those same Sultai decks, you come down on 1 or 2 copies of Casualties and you slip in a copy of this in place of Casualties. Because again, situationally, this will do as much or more than Casualties. So I just really, really like this card. You know, 6 mana to counter a spell and draw a card isn't very good, but 6 mana to draw a card and copy a creature and bounce a thing and draw a card or and counter a spell, whichever one I didn't say yet, are all very good. This also, by the way, counters Hydroid Krasis as well as all the stuff that it puts on the stack, right? All the drawing a card and gaining the life and all that. And can also bounce something else at the same time and copy one of your own creatures. It's just insane. The card is good. The card is actually good, and I think that 6 mana is nowhere near too expensive for an effect like this to see some amount of play, because, I mean, I guess people haven't learned from Cryptic Command yet that modal spells on this level are always very powerful. And there's plenty of stuff to copy and get enter the battlefield effects, by the way. Praise the Lord that they just banned Agent of Treachery. Can you imagine? Can you imagine countering a spell? Oops, copy my Agent of Treachery. How many scoops would that force? So, but you can still copy an enormous amount of important, you know, green, blue, whatever creatures in this format right now, you know. Counter your spell, copy Cavalier of Thorns and bounce your thing and draw a card. My God. The card is boss, and it's probably going to see some amount of play. Mark my words. But that's all I got for this one. Just let me know how you felt about all the takes down there in the place. Is new Cryptic Command, like, bad? Is it bad? I don't think it's bad. But let me know if you think it's bad. I want to know. Is Radha a little bit better than I thought? Although, note, this is where people get their lines crossed. I did say Radha's a good card and might even see play before rotation and almost certainly will after. But I still didn't sound very excited about it. So, like, tell me all the crazy stuff you can do with Radha right now that makes it a playable card. Just, you know, there's a lot to talk about in just, like, these 5 cards today. Is Palladium Mirror going to see more play than I thought? Right? Like, it's really cool stuff today. Even though we only got to see 5 cards, they picked 5 really cool ones to look at. So give me all your takes down there in the comments section. I read said comments, and I appreciate everybody letting me do my Backlash predictions video. I got like 40 dislikes on it, but still, there's a lot of love in the comments section, and I got like 10 times as many likes. So appreciate you letting me do that. If you're interested in WWE content, check that out. But there's also a bunch of other spoiler videos for this entire set. If you haven't seen any of those, I'll leave links in the description for them. Or you can just click on the channel icon and see a wealth of content. But aside from that, do the YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Check out the link to the Patreon. $1 a month is all I ask, and that'll help you pick what decks we do for Core Set 2021 Standard Season. Aside from that, I'm done. Follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev, and I guess pre-order any of the stuff that you might want to pre-order through the link to TCG Player down there, because when you pre-order through that link, you help your dude out a little bit. So yeah, do all that stuff. And I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love Be kind.